This is the brief on the disastrous dinner party at Castle Ravenloft. In this wild three-session arc, a group of adventurers accepts a dinner invitation from the vampire lord Strahd, hoping to reunite their ally Ismark with his missing sister, but the evening quickly collapses into absolute bloodshed. First, this diplomatic dinner turns into an emotional nightmare. You see, Strahd plays the gracious host, even granting Ismark's request to see his sister, Ireena. But the heroes are completely crushed to discover she's already been turned into a vampire. Even worse, she's wearing the Amulet of Ravenkind, a lost artifact they desperately need to defeat Strahd, literally taunting the group with their past failures. Second, the castle claims a leader's life. After Strahd suddenly vanishes, the group explores the keep, but their curiosity turns fatal out on the parapets. They fight a suit of animated armor, and their attacks literally just bounce right off the steel. The construct brutally slays Ismark, their primary ally and village leader, leaving our survivors totally leaderless in enemy territory. Finally, the retreat becomes a full-on panic. They trigger crazy traps of poison gas and giant spiders, splitting up in the chaos. One hero gets cornered by a literal blood monster, while another accidentally summons an invisible, enraged apparition of Strahd just by disturbing an ancient wedding cake. Yeah, it forces a totally terrified rout. As you can see, what started as a rescue mission resulted in their target becoming an undead enemy, the death of a key ally, and a desperate scramble to escape alive. They definitely learned the hard way that in Barovia, dinner with the devil rarely ends
Today
with dessert.
we're doing something a little different, and honestly, it's a little terrifying. We are stepping right into the lion's den, or, well, I guess more accurately, the vampire's dining room.
Right, yeah. It's a classic trope for a very good reason. You know the polite invitation to dinner issued by the villain.
Yeah.
It's this moment where the physical conflict just pauses, right? And the psychological warfare really begins. It's Hannibal Lecter serving wine. It's Darth Vader sitting at the head of the table in Cloud City.
Oh, man, that is such a good comparison. It's exactly that. It's that moment where you absolutely know you are outmatched, but you kind of have to pretend you're just having a nice, normal meal.
Precisely. It's a suspension of the rules of war, but really only on a superficial level, because underneath the surface, the war is actually intensifying. It just, it shifts from swords and spells to words and perceptions.
Exactly. And so for you listening, we are looking at a stack of logs today. This is data from sessions 27, 28, and 29. It involves a party of adventurers, Yurhorn, Radley, and Perlan, and their ally, Ismark. And the premise here is actually pretty simple. They have finally accepted an invitation to dine at Castle Ravenloft with Strahd von Zarovich.
But as we're going to see as we dig into this, the dinner is really merely a pretext. The true purpose of this visit, at least from Strahd's perspective, seems to be a systematic, almost clinical dismantling of the party's hope.
Yeah, it's brutal.
We have 3 sessions of really dense material here. We're covering everything from a very tactical ambush on the road to the horrific reveal of a lost ally to the literal burning of the castle itself.
It is a totally chaotic ride. We've got deception, we've got the corruption of innocence, and we definitely have some serious tactical blunders. So our mission for this deep dive is to analyze exactly how Strahd uses his environment, how he uses his so-called hospitality to break his enemies before he even has to lift a single finger to fight them.
Right. And we also really need to look at the tragic arc of Ismark here, the burgomaster. His story in these 3 sessions is
devastating.
It really is. It's devastating. It highlights the actual cost of heroism in a setting where the deck is just completely rigged against you.
Truly. Okay, so let's unpack this. We start right in session 27. The party is leaving the Wizards of Wine, and they are heading straight to the castle. They are highly motivated. Ismark especially is very eager. They really think they are going on a rescue mission to save Ismark's sister, Ireena.
Right. And immediately, right off the bat, the tone is set by the environment. They are on the Swalloch Road, and they get hit by an ambush. But the thing you have to understand is this isn't just a random encounter. It is highly tactical.
Yeah, looking at the logs here, an armored figure rides out on a skeletal horse, shoots a bunch of arrows, and this is the part that is just so annoying as a player rides right back into the trees. It's shoot and scoop tactics.
Yeah, it's classic guerrilla warfare, but employed by the undead. These enemies are revenants. Now, just to be clear, Revenants are not your standard, shambling, mindless zombies. They are highly intelligent, incredibly vengeful spirits that have possessed a corpse. Their entire existence is fueled by a very specific hatred or a singular goal.
What makes them so dangerous?
Exactly. And by using this mobile archery riding out, firing, and retreating, they're actively baiting the party. They want the party to get frustrated and break formation.
And it totally works. The party chases the horseman because they think they can corner him in the woods. But while they are distracted by that, an ogre zombie just lumbers out from the woods behind them to cut off their escape route. It is a textbook pincer movement.
It's the hammer and anvil maneuver. The ogre is your anvil. It's a big, slow, incredibly hard-hitting obstacle that just pins you in place, and the revenants on the horses are the hammer, striking repeatedly from the flanks. It shows you that Strahd's forces aren't just some mindless mob. They are an army with real tactical acumen.
And this tactic nearly works perfectly.
Yeah.
Ismark, who, let's remember, is a skilled fighter, but is very much still mortal. He just gets hammered here. The log says he takes these massive crushing blows from the ogre, and then the horseman reappears from the trees and puts 2 arrows right into him, and he goes down.
This is such a key foreshadowing moment for the rest of the deep dive. Ismark is essentially the moral center of this group right now. He is the one with the deep personal stake in this.
Yeah, it's his sister.
Right. And here, right at the literal gates of his enemy's land, he is almost killed. It establishes the stakes for you immediately. Ismark is fragile. The party isn't just fighting for their own survival, they're escorting a VIP who is very, very mortal. It creates this underlying secondary objective in every single combat encounter they face. You have to protect the burgomaster.
Which just skyrockets the tension. I mean, it's only Eurohorn's really quick thinking, riding his mountain lion companion over and casting cure wounds that saves Ismark's life in that mud.
Let's actually pause on that image for just a second. A ranger, mounted on a mountain lion, weaving through a chaotic combat zone to deliver magical medical aid. That is high fantasy heroism at its absolute peak. But I want you to notice the contrast here. It's high fantasy heroism meeting really gritty, tactical horror.
Speaking of gritty horror, there is a super creepy detail in the logs here that I really do not want to gloss over. When they finally manage to kill the revenants, the things actually laugh at them. They laugh and say, "We shall meet again."
Because they absolutely will. Like I said, revenants are vengeful spirits that possess corpses. If you destroy the physical body they are currently wearing, the spirit itself isn't destroyed. It just floats right off into the woods and finds another corpse to inhabit. It is a relentless cycle.
And the really messed up part is the party realizes these revenants are actually inhabiting the bodies of other adventurers who were recently slain in this land.
It implies this massive history of failure. The party realizes they aren't the first group to try this. Dozens, maybe hundreds of heroes have come before them, and now their actual physical bodies are being used as weapons against the new heroes. That is deep psychological warfare. You are literally fighting your predecessors.
That is just so grim. It's like the land itself is just recycling its victims.
It is exactly that. And I want you to look at what Radley does in the aftermath of this fight. He literally strips the chainmail right off one of the dead bodies. He takes a great sword, a healing potion, and even a scroll of revivification. It really highlights the sheer scarcity in Barovia. If you want to survive, you have to scavenge from the people who failed before you. Radley is quite literally wearing a dead man's armor to a dinner party.
It's a waste not, want not kind of situation, but taken to the most macabre extreme imaginable. Like, just try to imagine showing up to a fancy dinner party wearing the shirt of the guy who just died in the host's driveway.
It sends a message, whether he intended it to or not. It says to Strahd, "We will do whatever it takes to survive." But at the same time, it also marks them as scavengers. They are barely scraping by.
Right, so they survive this brutal ambush. They skirt past the town of Vallaki and finally reach the gates of Ravenloft. And this is exactly where the atmospheric horror kicks into high gear. The weather turns incredibly violent immediately. We are talking massive thunder, lightning strikes, and there is a coach just waiting for them.
An unmanned coach, importantly.
Which is always, always a giant red flag. The doors of the coach just open automatically. There's no driver, just 2 dark, terrifying horses. It's Strahd basically broadcasting, "I control everything here. I don't even need living servants to fetch you."
Exactly. It also totally removes the ability for the party to interact with the human element before arriving. Usually in this kind of scenario, you'd chat with the driver on the way up, right? Maybe get some gossip, some intel on the castle layout.
Bribe him a little.
Yeah, exactly. But here, There is just silence. Just the mechanics of the trap slowly closing around them. They are being transported like pieces of cargo.
And the journey itself is designed specifically to make them feel tiny. They have to cross this massive drawbridge over a huge gorge. The source material notes it's a 50-foot wide gorge with sheer walls that are 100 feet high.
It's an imposing physical barrier.
And the bridge is loudly creaking and swaying violently in the storm winds. It's so precarious. It really feels like you are crossing a threshold into a world where the normal laws of safety just completely cease to apply.
That's spot on. In classical literature, crossing a bridge very often symbolizes a transition from the world of the living into the underworld. Think of the river Styx. Once they cross that swaying, rotting wood over that drop, they have fully left the safety of the known world behind them. They are undeniably in Strahd's domain now.
And the moment they cross that bridge, they meet the welcoming committee. Rahadin, the Chamberlain.
Rahadin is a fascinating figure. He is a dusk elf. Now, without getting too bogged down into the deep lore, you should know the Dusk Elves have a horrific, tragic history with Strahd that involves absolute genocide. And Rahadin actually betrayed his own people to serve Strahd. He is a traitor to his entire race, but he is unflinchingly loyal to his master.
Wow. And the source specifically knows he has this terrifying aura. As he gets physically closer to the adventurers, they start hearing screaming voices in their heads.
It is a literal auditory psychic assault. The screams get louder and more desperate the closer he gets to you. It strongly implies a personal history of violence that is so profound it literally clings to his being. These are very likely the souls of the thousands of people he has personally killed or betrayed. He is a walking war crime.
And notice the stark contrast here. The party is visibly revulsed. They are clutching their ears in pain, and Rahadin is just completely emotionless. He offers this incredibly terse, polite welcome. It is just mundane bureaucracy wrapped up in eternal torment.
He normalizes the horror. To him, the screaming of the damned is just background noise. He politely asks for their coats while the souls of his victims are shrieking into their ears. It completely disarms the party because, really, how do you politely respond to that kind of greeting?
You can't. He leads them into the Great Hall,
Yeah.
which has the classic cobwebs, huge vaulted ceilings, very Gothic vibes. And then he opens these massive bronze doors to the banquet hall, and suddenly we are just in a completely different movie.
Yes. The sensory shift here is incredibly jarring. Outside, it is thunder, lightning, and swaying bridges over death drops. Inside, it is bright crystal chandeliers, tables laden with roasted beast, amber liquid sitting in fine goblets. It is pure opulence. It's civilization.
And there's music playing, a massive pipe organ.
Yeah.
And who is sitting there playing it? The man himself, Strahd von Zarovich.
Playing in raptured ecstasy, as the log specifically notes, and this is key. It is a performance. He desperately wants them to see him not just as a brutal warlord, but as an artist, as a sophisticate. He is capable of creating beauty. It immediately complicates their view of him. If he was just a snarling monster, it would be very easy to hate him and fight him. But a monster who plays beautiful Bach-style fugues, that is deeply unsettling.
Right, so he finishes, stops playing, turns around, and plays the gracious host. And I have to say, this conversation at the dinner table is a complete minefield. Strahd is just so deeply arrogant, he casually apologizes for not eating the food with them because it's, quote, no longer his custom, which, is a polite way of saying he drinks human blood.
It's a massive power move. He is saying, I am providing for you, but I am entirely above your petty biological needs. And then he just starts monologuing about his past conquests. He wants them to fully understand that he earned this land through blood and war. He frames himself as a noble conqueror, a bringer of order, rather than a bloodthirsty tyrant.
But then we get to the actual mistakes made by the party. Radley. Oh, Radley. Strahd is just chatting him up, making conversation, and Radley decides it's a great time to mention that the party is staying with the Mardukov family at the Wizards of Wine.
This is a critical intelligence failure. It is a massive breach of operational security.
Right. Why on earth would he volunteer that information?
It is highly likely a mix of severe nerves and a misplaced sense of social reciprocity. This is a very common psychological phenomenon, actually. When someone who is in a position of extreme power treats you politely, you feel a deep, almost involuntary social urge to be polite right back. Strahd asks a casual question, and Radley answers it simply because it would feel socially rude not to.
But the consequences of that are huge. The Mardukovs are the resistance network. They run the winery, which supplies literally the only joy left in Barovia.
Exactly. Radley just casually handed the location of the primary resistance cell directly to the head of the secret police. The expert commentary in the notes points out that Strahd regards him curiously after this. He is probably sitting there thinking, I cannot believe it was actually that easy. He didn't even have to torture anyone or cast a spell. He just passed the bread rolls and asked, so where are you folks staying these days?
Meanwhile, Eurahorn is taking a totally different approach. He's actively trying to provoke Strahd by feeding pieces of meat to his mountain lion right at the dinner table.
Which is certainly a bold move. It's a deliberate, calculated breach of etiquette. He is trying to non-verbally say, I do not respect your rules or your authority, but Strahd just ignores it completely. He is too ancient, too completely secure in his power to be baited by bad table manners from a mortal. He treats it exactly like a parent ignoring a toddler throwing food on the floor. It just reinforces his absolute superiority in the room.
But then, the trap finally snaps shut. Eurahorn decides to ask the big question. He says, can we see Ireena?
And this is the pivotal moment. Strahd just laughs. He's like, sure, let me get her for you. This is the moment Ismark has been waiting for his entire life, it seems. He's fully ready to rescue his sister right now. Rashi opens the bronze doors, and in walks Ireena.
But something is deeply wrong.
Yes.
Everything is wrong. She is dressed in this dark black evening gown. Her skin is completely alabaster, and her eyes are red.
She has been turned.
She's a full vampire.
And it is not just her. She is actually accompanied into the room by Yeska. This is the missing altar boy from the church in Vallaki. He's wearing this dirty cassock, but he has a frilled collar over it, which is a horrible mockery of his priesthood. And he's a vampire now, too.
This is the crushing reveal of the logs. It is not a combat encounter. It is a theatrical presentation of their ultimate failure. And the real kicker here, the detail that makes it so much worse. Ireena is wearing the Amulet of Ravenkind.
That is the dagger right in the heart. For those who don't know, the amulet is this incredibly powerful, holy artifact that the party spent multiple past sessions desperately trying to find. It actively radiates sunlight. It is the ultimate weapon against vampires in this world, and they lost it when their cleric died in a previous session.
And now it is literally hanging around the neck of the very vampire they came here to destroy, worn proudly by the woman they came here to save.
It is a total devastating inversion of their entire quest. It is Strahd loudly saying, your greatest tools of salvation are now just my casual jewelry. It actively mocks their efforts. It renders their entire campaign up to this exact point a complete and utter failure.
Ismark's reaction in the logs is just heartbreaking to read. He yells out, calls Strahd a monster. He instinctively reaches for his sword to fight. And Strahd, he doesn't even bother to draw a weapon or cast a spell. He just laughs at him and vanishes.
Because he leaves them alone with their failure. He fundamentally doesn't need to fight them. He has already won this engagement entirely on his terms. He took their main mission objective, which was save Ireena, and turned it into a horrific new reality where she is now an active enemy. And by vanishing like that, he completely denies them the catharsis of combat. If they could just fight him right there, they could feel like they were actively doing something. But he leaves them all alone with his victim.
And Ireena, she isn't the sweet, scared girl Radley remembers from the village. She's cruel now. She purposefully walks over and sits right in Strahd's empty chair. She casually taunts them. She dodges all their frantic questions about the layout of the castle. And Yeska, this little innocent altar boy, just hisses at them with what the log calls a murderous visage.
It is the ultimate corruption of innocence. Strahd has taken the exact things the party cares about, family, religion, childhood innocence, and worked them into weapons. This is the very definition of Gothic horror. It isn't just about cheap jump scares or gore. It's about the systemic degradation of the good in the world.
And then, exactly like Strahd did, Ireena just casually dissolves into mist and leaves the room.
Leaving the party completely alone in this massive banquet hall. The dinner is officially over. The host has left. Their status as guests has been fully revoked. Now they are just intruders in a very dangerous house.
So there they are. They're just standing there alone in this huge room. There's all this uneaten food on the table. Ismark is completely devastated, probably in shock. And they collectively realize, okay, well, we are inside the castle. The bad guys just left. What do we do now?
And this naturally begins segment 3 of the logs, the architecture of madness. They make the choice to explore. But I want you to notice the massive shift in tone here. The castle essentially changes around them. It goes from being an opulent palace to a terrifying dungeon.
Yeah, they walk out of the dining room into the hallway, and suddenly there are just vampire spawn clinging to the walls, crawling around, just leering down at them. But they don't attack.
Which is a massive show of restraint and power. Strahd is communicating, you are currently alive solely because I am allowing it. It creates this immense suffocating tension. They're basically walking through a shark tank, and all the sharks are just watching them with hungry eyes. Every single step they take is a severe test of their nerve.
So they head down to the Hall of Faith. It's this ruined chapel area. And there's a corpse on the floor clutching a holy icon, and there's a single mysterious ray of light shining down on it.
This is a great example of environmental storytelling. The corpse alone implies a whole tragic story. Someone clearly tried to find sanctuary in this holy place and failed miserably. Radley and Eurahorn immediately go to loot the body, which brings that scavenging theme right back to the forefront. They take a black mace and a cloak off the guy, but they specifically choose to leave the icon.
Why do you think they left it? I mean, it's a holy item in a vampire castle.
Extreme paranoia. In a place that is this deeply cursed, seeing a perfect ray of light shining down on a holy object just looks entirely too good to be true. They instantly suspect it's a trap. Strahd has successfully, at this point, made them absolutely afraid of hope itself.
Which really shows exactly how paranoid they've become in just a few hours.
Yeah.
Then they decide to go upstairs, and they meet, honestly, my favorite weirdo in this entire dungeon, Leif Lipsiege.
Ah, yes, the accountant.
He's literally chained to a desk. He's sitting there doing Strahd's taxes.
It is the banality of evil I mentioned earlier. Amidst all the gothic horror and the blood drinking, someone still has to sit down and balance the books. Castles require heavy maintenance. Armies require regular payment. Leif completely ignores these heavily armed intruders to just focus on Strahd's finances.
It is just so absurd. They walk in like, excuse me, we are here to violently kill the master of this castle. And he's just like, yes, take a number. I'm currently calculating the annual grain tithe from the village.
It beautifully grounds the horror in this strange, almost administrative reality. Leif isn't a terrifying monster in the traditional sense. He is a pencil-pushing functionary. He represents the boring bureaucracy of this terrible occupation. And the fact that he is physically chained to his desk tells you everything you could ever need to know about Strahd's employment benefits package.
Right, and he just sneers at them. He tells them, I'm busy. And the party's so thrown off, they just leave him be. They move on and find the throne room. And here's a tiny detail that the source material specifically flags as bizarre. The throne in the room faces the wall.
Yes, it faces south, pointing completely away from the room itself.
Why? What is your actual take on that architectural choice?
It is purely symbolic, I believe. A ruler typically sits facing his court. He faces the people he rules over. By having the throne face the blank wall, Strahd is physically turning his back on his subjects, on the living world entirely. It strongly suggests he has absolutely no interest in actually ruling this land. He is only interested in his own dark obsessions. Or perhaps he is staring at something that only he can see, like the ghosts of his past. Either way, it heavily emphasizes his utter isolation.
It's super unnerving to just walk into a room and see that. So they keep going up. They eventually hit the rooftop. It is absolutely pouring rain outside. And then the storm clouds physically form into Strahd's giant face and just start spewing swarms of bats at them.
It's a massive demonstration of dominion. He is telling them he is the land itself. He literally controls the weather patterns. Now, mechanically, the bats are mostly just a nuisance, but the message is incredibly powerful. There is nowhere outside these walls where you are safe. It effectively forces them right back inside. It traps them within the terrifying architecture of the castle.
Yeah, they retreat right back inside the door and immediately run into a ghost. That, wait for it, turns out to just be a scary mannequin on strings.
The literal prank.
A prank! The ancient vampire lord is trolling them in his own house.
It highlights his very juvenile sense of humor, or perhaps just his deep, eternal boredom. He is actively toying with them. He wants to hear them scream in terror, and then immediately feel incredibly foolish for screaming at a doll. It deconstructs their sense of heroism. It makes them feel like silly children wandering through a cheap haunted house attraction instead of epic heroes.
They do actually find a real fight eventually. There's this zombie ambush out on the king's balcony. But the source notes it's a very simple combat encounter. They just cut the zombies down easily. It's almost too easy for them.
Because the physical threat isn't the real point of this place yet, the castle is designed to wear them down mentally first. And now we move right into segment 4 of the logs, where they start meeting the other residents of these upper floors. This is where that uncomfortable social horror returns in full force.
Right. They are searching around and they find a secret door, which, good job by Perlan spotting that. And behind it, they find a bedroom. And there's a young girl hiding in there, Helga Ruvak. She claims she's just a maid from the village, a simple bootmaker's daughter.
And here's where we see the absolute tragedy of the community breakdown in Barovia. Ismark, who is the burgomaster, the leader of that village, doesn't know who she is. He looks at her, says the villagers are very reclusive, and just shrugs.
That is wild to me. The elected leader of this tiny village doesn't even know his own people by sight.
It shows you exactly how fractured the society really is under Strahd's rule. Pure fear keeps everyone completely isolated in their homes. Neighbors don't know their neighbors because trusting anyone gets you killed or taken. So Helga begs them, she pleads to be taken with them. But the party,
They just leave her.
they leave her behind.
They promise her they'll come back later, but the log says she looks desperate and forlorn as they shut the door. They have become so wildly suspicious of everything in this castle that they can't even trust a crying girl.
And honestly, from a survival standpoint, they're completely right to be suspicious. In Ravenloft, innocence is very often just a mask for a trap. But making that choice still deeply erodes their morality. They are being forced to make these very cold, calculated equations. Is she a trap? Even if she isn't, can we actually afford to escort a defenseless civilian through a vampire lair right now? And they decided the answer was no. They're becoming colder, just like the stone of the castle.
Then they keep moving and find Gertruda, and this is honestly even sadder. She's the teenage daughter of a woman known as Mad Mary from the village. The party has actually been hearing rumors about her missing daughter for several sessions, and they find her in this incredibly lavish, fancy bedroom that smells heavily of expensive perfume.
And she's completely, totally delusional. She actually thinks Strahd is this charming, wonderful prince. She truly believes she's living in a beautiful fairy tale. She's entirely oblivious to the lethal danger she is in.
She even casually mentions to the party that her personal attendant has, quote, body parts of different animals, which is just so disturbing.
She is describing the mongrel folk. But Gertruda doesn't see the horror of these stitched-together creatures. She sees magic. She actively interprets the grotesque reality of the castle as whimsical and fun. It shows you the incredible, tragic power of human denial when faced with absolute trauma.
The party desperately tries to warn her. They try to explain what Strahd is, but she just speaks so adoringly of him. And Ismark, to his absolute credit as a leader, refuses to just leave her alone in there. He decides to stay behind in the room to protect her, while the rest of the party continues exploring the floor.
Good guy Ismark. I mean, even after just seeing his own sister turned into a monster, he's still desperately trying to save this random girl. He is clinging so hard to his duty as the burgomaster. But the rest of the party moves on and enters a study. And this is exactly where the timeline of the whole story gets incredibly wonky. They look up and find a portrait hanging right over the mantel. The paint is clearly centuries old, but the subject of the painting is Ireena.
The painting looks exactly identically like Ismark's sister, but it is dated from hundreds of years ago.
This is the massive hammer drop for Ismark. He comes in and he sees his beloved sister, who is currently in her 20s, depicted perfectly in a painting from the distant, ancient past.
How's that even possible in the lore?
It firmly points to the cycle. The Curse of Strahd is fundamentally cyclical. Tatiana, who was Strahd's original human love centuries ago, is constantly reincarnated over and over again. Strahd has been hunting and chasing this poor woman's soul across generations. Ireena is just the current physical vessel. She isn't just a random victim. She is a rerun of an ancient tragedy.
And Ismark just breaks when he realizes this. The log says he literally lapses into sobs. It's just entirely too much for one person. His sister's a vampire, and now he finds out she might just be a tiny part of some ancient, inescapable curse loop. He collapses on the floor.
He realizes in that moment that his entire family's personal tragedy is really just a minor blip in Strahd's eternal, horrific soap opera. It completely minimizes his personal pain. And while he's sitting there weeping on the floor, the party actually starts arguing with each other. Ismark turns and blames Radley, yelling, "I specifically asked you to take her to safety." And Radley yells back, "I took her to Vallaki exactly like I promised I would."
It's all falling apart right there.
Yeah.
The team cohesion is completely shattering. Extreme stress just brings out all the cracks in a group. And this perfectly leads us into session 29 and segment 5 of the outline, the fatal mistakes. Because right as they are arguing, raw greed starts to creep into their decision-making.
Yes. They discover a secret room hidden behind the fireplace in the study. Inside, it's very stark. There's just a single corpse holding a torch and a large chest full of gold sitting there.
That is the most classic trap set up in D&D history. A corpse and a treasure chest in a hidden room. It practically screams, "Do not touch this."
And Urihorn knows it. He specifically tells everyone to back out and leave the room. He's very suspicious. He verbally identifies it as a trap, but then
He opens it anyway.
His curiosity just gets the absolute better of him. He opens the lid of the chest.
And whoosh, a massive cloud of green gas fills the room.
He instantly hits the floor, completely unconscious. Radley rushes into the room to try and pull him out, and he inhales the gas and hits the floor too. Both of the party's heavy physical hitters are out cold in an instant.
So now it is entirely up to Perlan the monk. He manages to hold his breath, runs in, and drags Earhorn out into the hallway. But he can't manage to get Radley. The gas is just too thick and heavy, so he props Earhorn up in a chair to recover. This is a very specific moment in the logs that I really want to highlight for you. Earhorn, the ranger, has a mountain lion companion.
His beast companion, yes.
But right now, Earhorn is totally unconscious. So the magically bonded mountain lion is currently just a regular hungry mountain lion.
The magical bond of control is temporarily severed. So Perlan is suddenly just staring down a massive feral predator in a small room. The source text describes this incredibly tense moment where the large cat jumps up onto the table, turns, and coldly regards the monk. And Perlan realizes, with terror, this wild animal will not obey my commands. He has to back away very, very slowly.
It's such a small passing detail in the session, but it adds so much incredible tension. Your best friend's trusted pet instantly becomes a lethal threat the exact moment your friend goes down. It brilliantly reinforces how incredibly fragile their control over this entire situation really is.
And eventually, while they are waiting around recovering from the gas, they get bored and decide to explore yet another secret passage they found. The Spider Belfry.
Oh man, this is an absolute disaster from start to finish. They walk in and find a rope hanging down from a bell, and they pull it. Why do adventurers always feel the need to pull the random rope?
It's what I call the big red button syndrome. If you put a lever in a room, players will pull it. If there is a dangling rope, they will yank it. They just can't help themselves.
Well, in Castle Ravenloft, pulling the rope just rings a giant dinner bell for the local giant spiders. 6 of them drop right down from the ceiling on top of them.
Now, they do fight them off. The party is actually very good at tactical combat. They can easily handle a few spiders. But the webs these spiders drop are incredibly thick and sticky. So Earhorn, who has recovered by now, has a bright idea. He says, let's just use fire to brain the webs away.
Right. Let's start a fire. In a wooden belfry, in an incredibly ancient, dry castle, full of old timber.
It works entirely too well. The webs ignite instantly. The dry wooden timbers catch fire, and suddenly, the actual roof of Castle Ravenloft is on fire.
This is a huge turning point for the group. They've officially gone from being stealthy, careful explorers to accidental arsonists.
And from a tactical perspective, it is a complete disaster. You now have thick smoke, extreme heat, and severe structural instability to deal with. The castle is quite literally burning down right around them. The level of chaos is escalating rapidly. They have to flee the area immediately, which pushes them blindly and panicked right into the next encounter.
And it is amidst all this fire and smoke and chaos that we get the ultimate tragedy of these sessions. Segment 6, the death of Ismark.
This is a frantic sequence of events that plays out exactly like the finale of a slasher movie. Perlan is desperately exploring the outside parapets by climbing through a wardrobe window to escape the smoke. And out there, he finds a hulking suit of red armor just standing on the balcony.
And it's not just decorative armor. It's magically animated armor. And it immediately starts chasing him.
Perlan is a monk, so he's very fast. He sprints right back inside through the window into the bedroom where Ismark and Gertruda are still hiding. But this massive suit of armor just stomps right in after him.
So now Ismark, who is already just completely emotionally wrecked from crying over the painting, has to stand up and fight. He draws his long sword. Gertruda is cowering in the corner, screaming her head off. Perlan is frantically punching this solid metal thing.
And the armor is completely relentless. It is heavily resistant to standard physical damage. Worse, it uses area of effect lightning attacks. The source logs specifically say that Ismark's sword just clangs harmlessly off the plating, and Perlan manages to dent it a bit, but the construct shows absolutely no sign of fatigue. It is an unfeeling machine of death.
And then, it finally happens. The armor swiftly bypasses Ismark's guard, and it just slays him.
The log is incredibly blunt about it. Ismark, the burgomaster, is slain. But the physical imagery the DM uses is so specific and so cruel. He physically falls backward and he dies with his dead eyes staring directly through the open door toward the study with his sister's ancient portrait.
God, that is just devastating. He died looking right at the eternal evidence of his sister's inescapable curse. He entirely failed to save her from Strahd. He completely failed to save himself, and he died in his enemy's fancy guest bedroom fighting a random piece of animated furniture.
It completely severs the party's emotional anchor to Barovia. Ismark was their true moral compass. He was the literal reason they were on this quest to begin with. With him dead on the floor, the whole mission loses its heart. They are no longer brave heroes helping a desperate brother save his family. They are now just desperate intruders trapped in a burning house trying to survive the night.
And Pearlan actually goes down too. The armor just trucks right over him right after it kills Ismark.
Yeah. And when they finally wake up later, are they captured in the dungeon? No, they've just been moved. They wake up resting in a different, comfortable guest room. Ismark's dead body is completely gone. The mountain lion is gone. And there's just some guy lounging on a velvet couch nearby. Escher.
Oh, this guy, he's just so painfully casual about the whole thing. He's like, oh, hello there. I saw you boys got dragged in here unconscious.
Escher is a vampire spawn, but he's a very unique one in the castle's hierarchy. He is a consort. He has this handsome, faded elegance about him, and he is entirely, completely self-obsessed. He doesn't care about the party or their dead friend at all. He just casually complains about how Strahd used to find him beautiful, but is now growing bored of him.
He tells them he's terrified of being, quote, locked away in a crypt. It gives the players this really dark glimpse into the inevitable future of Strahd's toys. You get played with until he's bored, and then you just get put away in a box forever.
It perfectly illustrates the cold dispensability of Strahd's affections. Escher is essentially just a discarded, sad pet. Now, the party briefly considers killing him right there. Eurihorn actually whispers to the others, should we take him out? But they are so badly battered at this point. Radley and Pearlan just shake their heads and decide no unnecessary confrontations right now, so they literally just turn and walk away. And Escher just goes right back to reading his book on the couch.
The absolute disrespect of it all. But to be fair, they do have much bigger problems to deal with. They walk back into the study where the painting is, and they notice the fire in the hearth has been neatly relit. Gertruda is completely gone. Ismark's body is gone, and his blood has been mostly cleaned off the floor, but a faint, dark stain remains on the rug.
It is exactly like the castle is quietly resetting itself. It's scrubbing away any impact they had. The huge fire they started in the belfry, it's likely been magically extinguished or safely contained by servants, the bodies of their friends, quietly removed. It's a tactic to make their violent struggle feel completely meaningless. The house always wins.
So they keep moving, and Eurihorn decides to investigate a dark bathing chamber they find. He looks inside and sees a large bathtub completely full of this thick, dark liquid.
Rule number 1 of horror. Never, ever look in the creepy tub.
Exactly. A screaming, horrifying figure made entirely of blood just erupts out of the tub. It leaps up and clings to the ceiling.
This is very likely a specialized vampire spawn, or perhaps one of the brides using some advanced form of blood magic. It drips and splashes thick blood everywhere. Eurihorn panics and shoots an arrow at it, but he completely misses. The creature just scuttles away in the shadows.
But Eurihorn actually chases it. He is so mad at this point. He runs all the way back up to the rainy roof to find it, but he loses its trail in the storm. And when he walks back down to the bathroom, all the blood is totally gone. The tub is completely dry and dusty.
Pure gaslighting. Was the blood creature even real, or is the dark magic of the castle just actively messing with his mind now? It creates this deep, terrifying doubt in his own senses. Remember, Eurihorn is the ranger, he's the tracker, the highly perceptive one in the group. If he can't even trust his own eyes anymore, who can they trust?
Nobody. And then we finally reach the climax of the logs. The wedding cake.
Yes. They wander into this incredibly dusty, abandoned dining room. And sitting on the table, there is a massive tiered wedding cake, just slowly rotting and listing heavily to one side. There is a small bride figurine still standing on top, but the groom figurine has fallen off. So Pearlan, investigating the room, reaches down and picks up the groom figurine from the floor.
And the entire cake just absolutely explodes.
Moldering chunks of ancient cake and frosting are flying absolutely everywhere. Thick dust is swirling all around the room, and slowly in that thick cloud of dust, the invisible, hulking silhouette of Strahd von Zarovich appears.
He is absolutely furious. He's technically invisible, but the swirling dust perfectly outlines his body. He violently reaches out his hand for Pearlan, and that is exactly where the session log ends.
Talk about an incredible cliffhanger to end on.
Seriously. So let's take a breath and just recap the scoreboard here for a minute. This quote-unquote polite dinner party was an unmitigated disaster for the heroes.
A total, sweeping catastrophe. Let's list the actual losses here. 1. Ismark is dead. The burgomaster, their friend and guide, is gone forever. 2. Ireena is fully confirmed as a vampire and is now an active enemy. 3. The Amulet of Ravenkind, their absolute best super weapon against the undead, is securely in enemy hands.
4. They accidentally set the roof of the castle on fire. And 5. They willingly gave away the secret location of their only allies, the Mardukov family.
And finally, number 6. They are currently scattered, physically battered, emotionally exhausted, and facing a completely enraged invisible vampire lord inside a room full of exploding wedding cake.
It is a literal masterclass in failure. But honestly, from a gameplay perspective, it is also a masterclass in DMing and narrative storytelling. Strahd didn't just walk out and beat them up with high stats. He cordially invited them inside, systematically showed them exactly how hopeless their quest was, carefully peeled away all their allies, and then just sat back and let his castle eat them alive.
Which brings us perfectly back to the provocative question for this entire deep dive. Looking at all this, with Ismark dead on the floor and Ireena fully turned into a monster, does the party actually have any valid reason left to stay in Barovia?
That is the big question, isn't it? Their primary driving mission for months was save Ireena. Well, she's a vampire now. Her brother is dead. Technically speaking, the mission is a total failure. It's game over.
But the real question is, can they even leave if they want to? The magical mists still trap them in the valley. They might find themselves fighting from this point on, not for any noble heroism or to save a girl, but purely out of spite, or just raw survival. And psychologically, when you strip away a hero's noble cause, you're only left with the survivor's desperate, cornered rage. And honestly, that might actually make them far more dangerous to Strahd, because now they have absolutely nothing left to lose.
Man, that's a chilling thought. And what on earth happens when that invisible wedding cake ghost finally catches Perlan in the dusty room? I guess we're just going to have to wait for the next batch of logs to find out.
Indeed we will. It is going to be a very, very long night in Castle Ravenloft.
Well, thank you all so much for listening to this deep dive. And hey, if you ever get a fancy gold-lettered dinner invitation from a reclusive vampire, maybe just tell them you're busy that night.
Yeah, just send a polite card.
Welcome
Exactly.
to the debate.
We'll see you next
And I'm joining you to offer a completely different view.
Today, we are turning our analytical lens toward the Valley of Barovia. Specifically, we are dissecting the recent and frankly harrowing expedition undertaken by the party consisting of Urihorn, Radley, and Perlan.
Right.
We're looking really closely at their decision to, well, accept a dinner invitation from the Dreadlord Strahd von Zarovich. And, of course, the subsequent navigational nightmare of Castle Ravenloft itself.
A classic blunder. Historically speaking, walking into the vampire's lair willingly it's rarely a survival-positive strategy.
Indeed. But the central question we are tackling today really goes to the very nature of that environment. Is Castle Ravenloft primarily a psychological construct, a theater designed by Strahd to torment the mind and soul of his guests? Or is it, as you often contend, a highly functional, lethal fortress designed to physically destroy intruders?
Yeah, it's basically the difference between a haunted house attraction and a meat grinder. And I argue firmly for the latter.
And I take the position that the castle is a stage for psychological warfare. The physical threats, while obviously present, are secondary props. Strahd's primary goal was the emotional dismantling of his guests, particularly the breaking of the Burgomeister Ismark and the corruption of his sister Ireena. The castle isn't really designed to kill the body. It is designed to shatter the ego.
And I come at it from a very different angle. I argue that despite the undeniable theatricality, and look, Strahd is nothing if not dramatic, the castle operates as a lethal, mechanical dungeon. The environmental hazards, the traps, the raw combat prowess of its guardians, those are the primary vectors of danger. You see a stage play, I see a kill box where the party survived only by, honestly, statistical anomaly and high constitution scores.
Well, let's dive right into the dinner itself, because I think this is where the evidence for psychological warfare is just incontrovertible. Consider the setup. The party arrives, they meet Rahadin, they are ushered into this grand, echoing hall, and Strahd is playing the organ.
It's a bit of a cliche, isn't it?
It is a deliberate trope. He is setting a scene, he isn't rolling initiative, he is monologuing. He's talking about his conquest and his glory, but the true weapon here wasn't a sword. It was the casting of the scene, the entrance of Ireena Kolyana.
Which was the entire objective of Ismark's escort mission.
Exactly. Ismark has been utterly desperate to save his sister. When she enters, she isn't just a vampire spawn. She is a total mockery of the party's entire crusade. She's wearing the Amulet of Ravenkind.
Yeah, that was...
We have to pause on the significance of that. This is a holy artifact, a mechanic explicitly designed to destroy undead, and she is wearing it as costume jewelry.
It's a massive flex, I grant you. It demonstrates total domination over the very items that are supposed to hurt him.
It creates absolute despair. And she is attended by Jeska, the former altar boy from St. Andrew's. He's not just undead. He's wearing a frilly rough collar. He has been reduced to a pet, a prop on the stage. It is a deliberate desecration of his former role as a servant of the Morning Lord. Listen, Strahd didn't kill Ismark at that table. He let Ismark see his sister, taunting and cruel. He shattered the man's resolve before a single hit point was lost. That is psychological warfare, pure and simple.
I see why you prioritize that interpretation, and I don't deny the cruelty of the tableau. It was horrific, but let me give you a slightly different perspective. You're focusing on the cutscene, but I'm looking at the resource attrition required to even reach that cutscene.
You mean the approach on this foliage road?
I mean the ambush. Before they even stepped foot in that dining hall, what happened? They were nearly annihilated. This wasn't a mind game. This was a high CR encounter designed to drain resources. Revenants and an ogre zombie coming out of the tree line? That is a brute force tactical strike. Ismark wasn't psychologically dismantled there. He was physically crushed by an ogre. He was beaten to within an inch of his life.
But Urihorn healed him.
Which cost spell slots. That's the point. By the time they walked into that dining hall, they were battered, their healing pool was totally depleted, and they knew they were outmatched. That ambush set the tone. It said, I can kill you whenever I want. If the castle is just a stage, why soften them up with lethal force first? And inside the castle, just look at the trap in the secret room behind the study hearth.
The gas trap?
Right. Perlin finds a coffer, Urihorn opens it, and green gas just fills the room. That isn't a riddle. It isn't some deep moral dilemma. It's a Constitution saving throw. Urihorn and Radley went down hard. That gas didn't care about their feelings or the narrative arc. It was a blunt force dungeon trap designed to incapacitate.
I'm really not convinced by that line of reasoning, because the gas didn't kill them, it incapacitated them. It heightened the helplessness. It reinforces the idea that they are essentially toys to be moved around the board. But let's look at the actual residents they encountered, because this, to me, absolutely proves the theater theory.
Go on.
They find Helga Ruvak, the bootmaker's daughter, in a room that is clean, with unlit lanterns. She claims to be a maid. This is a classic damsel setup. It creates immediate social friction. Ismark refuses to leave her. Radley and Perlin are suspicious. Strahd has placed her there specifically to see if the party will tear itself apart over what to do with a civilian. It's a test of character, not combat prowess.
Or she's a vampire spawn, placed there to ambush them if they let their guard down, which she is.
Then look at Gertruda. She's in a lavish bedroom, completely oblivious. She tells them she ran away because the castle looked majestic. She thinks Strahd is wonderful. This is designed to confuse the party's moral compass. It shows the corrupting power of Strahd's charisma. It's not a combat encounter. It's a narrative encounter designed to make them question their own definitions of monster and victim.
And Escher?
The perfect example, a vampire consort lounging in a chair, reading a book. He doesn't attack. He actually complains about being bored. He's worried Strahd will lock him in a crypt. He provides lore. He provides atmosphere. He emphasizes the ennui of immortality. If this were a fortress strictly designed to kill, Escher rolls initiative the moment they walk in. Instead, he chats.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that. You are seriously cherry-picking the social interactions and completely ignoring the initiative roles. Yes, Escher talks, Helga talks, but these are merely brief pauses between intense, lethal violence. You want to talk about residents? Let's talk about the red animated armor on the battlements.
Ah, the construct that attacked Perlin.
It didn't just attack, it executed. It didn't speak, it didn't taunt them about their morals, it engaged in brutal melee efficiency. It used a greatsword and electrical surges. This wasn't a prop. It physically slew Ismark. It beat past his AC, dealt massive damage, and dropped him. Then it took down Parolin. That is the castle functioning as a fortress. It identified intruders and neutralized them with extreme prejudice.
But that leads to the resurrection, which is a key point for me.
Hold on, I'm not done with the resonance. What about the thing in the bathtub? Eurahorn walks into a dark bathroom and a screaming figure made of blood launches itself out of the tub.
The blooded simulacrum?
It was a predator. It scuttles on the ceiling. It drips blood. Eurahorn is firing arrows at it in a panic. This isn't a conversation about ennui. It's a desperate fight for survival against a monster. Even the giant spiders in the belfry, those are classic physical threats requiring fire and steel to overcome. The residents of Ravenloft are monsters. The fact that some of them talk before they bite doesn't change their stat blocks.
That's a fair point, though. I would frame the quote-unquote death of Ismark very differently, which we will get to. But first, we really have to discuss the architecture itself. You claim it's a military fortress. I look at the layout and I see a funhouse.
A funhouse? That implies it's harmless.
No, it implies it is deeply disorienting. Look at the audience hall. The throne faces the wall. Why? It serves literally no functional purpose for a ruler. Mechanically, it creates a massive blind spot. But artistically, it is a profound statement of contempt for his courtiers. It is art. Or consider the mannequin.
The prank.
It is explicitly a prank. They are walking down a dark hall. They hear a terrifying moan. A fanged visage flies at them, and it's a doll on ropes and pulleys. The moan is just wind blowing through holes. This proves, beyond the shadow of a doubt, that Strahd has set this up as a haunted house attraction. He is mocking their fear. A fortress doesn't have jump scare mannequins. A stage set does.
I see the mannequin as the exception, not the rule. It lures you into a false sense of security right before you step into a lethal hazard. Because if you look at the macro-level architecture, it is pure military fortification. We are talking about a 100-foot drop from the parapets. We are talking about a drawbridge over a gorge that violently sways in the wind. These are defensive structures designed to limit movement and create fatal fall damage opportunities.
Standard castle design, surely.
But look at the interior mechanics, the secret doors. Parolin had to perform a laborious search, a highly difficult skill check, just to find that wainscoted passage. And the mechanics. To open the secret door in the hearth, they had to manipulate the fire poker. To open the next one, they had to put a torch back in a specific sconce. This is a complex, mechanical puzzle dungeon. It requires physical interaction with the environment to progress.
Which feeds perfectly into the game aspect. Strahd is the game master.
It feeds into the lethality. Look at the fire in the belfry. Eurahorn lights the webs to kill the spiders. What happens? The dry timbers ignite. The roof catches fire. The physics of the world are real. The castle burns like a real structure. It isn't some illusion that dissipates when you disbelieve it. If you stay in that fire, you take fire damage. If you fall off that bridge, you take fall damage, roughly 10d6 worth of it. The architecture is a weapon.
And yet we must address the corpse, or rather, the lack thereof, in the room. You mentioned Ismark was slain by the armor. Parolin was struck down. And yet, they woke up.
They did.
They woke up in a nice bedchamber with Escher. If Ravenloft is a fortress designed to destroy intruders, why are they still breathing? Why did the armor stop its assault once they were unconscious? Why were they stabilized and moved to a guest room? This is the ultimate proof of the stage theory. Strahd is playing with his food. He killed Ismark, or removed him, because Ismark was the emotional anchor. Once Ismark was broken and defeated, the scene was over.
That is a very compelling narrative argument. But I think you are fundamentally misinterpreting the mechanics of Barovia and the true nature of the curse.
How so?
Ismark is gone. You say removed, I say dead. The blood was cleaned up, sure, but the notes specifically mention the stain remained on the floor. The lethality was entirely real for the NPC. The party surviving, that might not be Strahd's mercy. That might be the specific curse of the demiplane. Remember the Revenants? They said, "We shall meet again." Death is not an escape in Barovia.
So you think the castle actually killed them and the land itself brought them back?
or the Dark Powers did. Or perhaps Strahd simply stabilized them so he could torture them further. Yes, but the violence of the act was real. The armor didn't pull its punches. It dealt lethal damage. The outcome, survival, doesn't negate the intent of the attack, which was to destroy.
I disagree. If I shoot you with a gun, but have a team of doctors on standby to save you, I am not trying to kill you. I am trying to traumatize you. Just look at the wedding cake incident at the end.
The dining room finale.
Yes.
Perlin picks up the bride figurine, and the cake just explodes, moldering chunks everywhere. And then an invisible raging Strahd starts destroying the room. You might call that theatrics, but look at the nature of it. It's a temper tantrum. It's described as the invisible silhouette of an enraged Strahd. It's highly emotional. It's a metaphor for his decayed marriage prospects and his eternal obsession. It's not a strategic military strike. It's a scene from a tragic opera.
See, I look at the exact same event and draw a completely different conclusion. You see a metaphor, I see a proximity mine. Perlin disturbed a specific object, the figurine, and it triggered an explosive hazard, the cake. The invisible Strahd throwing furniture, that is a poltergeist effect or a telekinesis spell. It's physical force. It shattered glass, it created difficult terrain, it creates a highly hazardous environment where movement is penalized.
But the portrait.
In the study, they find a centuries-old painting of Ismark's sister, Ireena. That is pure gaslighting. It's designed to completely destabilize Ismark's understanding of reality and time. The castle attacks their sanity first and their bodies second.
Again, I see the portrait as a conveyance of lore. It's a hard fact of their reality that the soul is recycled. It's an exposition dump, not a weapon. But let's go back to the very start of the encounter. Rahaden.
The Chamberlain.
The screaming voices when he gets close. You would call that a psychic attack?
Absolutely. It relies entirely on the horror of hearing the voices of the dead. It demands an emotional response.
It demands a Constitution saving throw for psychic damage. It's an aura. It's a weaponized defensive capability. It's not just spooky noises to make you sad. It's a hazard that causes tangible physical pain and incapacitation. Rahaden isn't just an actor in a butler suit. He's a walking area of effect spell.
We certainly view the mechanics differently. But let's look at where they ended up. They are running. Yuri Horn is chasing a blood vampire that vanishes, magically, I might add, totally supporting the illusion theory. And then they are fleeing an invisible, raging entity. They are confused, terrified, and separated. The stagecraft has worked perfectly.
And they are also battered, bruised, completely out of spell slots, and -1 Burgomeister. The fortress has taken its toll.
So, as we wrap up, I stand firm by my assessment. Ravenloft is a projection of Strahd's psyche. From the polite dinner to the prank mannequin, from the centuries-old portrait to the vanishing blood in the bathtub. The absolute goal was to drive Ismark to despair and the party to confusion. The physical traps, the gas, the armor, they are just props. Dangerous props, sure, like a loaded gun on a stage, but props nonetheless. The real damage was done to Ismark's heart when he saw Ireena in that chair.
And I maintain that the psychological elements are just a thin veneer over a meat grinder. The gas was lethal, the spiders were lethal, the electrical shocks from the armor were highly lethal. Ismark is dead because he was hit with a greatsword, not because his feelings were hurt. The party survived by pure luck, a high tolerance for pain, and perhaps the perverse rules of the demiplane. But make no mistake, the castle actively tried to kill them.
Perhaps the true horror of Ravenloft is the synergy of both.
I can certainly agree with that. It disarms you with absurdity, a wedding cake, a silly mannequin, right before it hits you with harsh reality.
You're laughing at the puppet, and then the floor drops out.
Exactly. It uses the confusion to lower your armor class so the blade strikes true.
A terrifying thought, and certainly a lesson for anyone thinking of accepting a dinner invitation from a vampire lord.
Indeed. Bring a sword, bring a cleric, and maybe just don't eat the cake.
Thank you for joining us for the debate. We really encourage you to look at your own games, your own stories. Where exactly is the line between a performance and a genuine threat?
And is the difference really
Welcome
just
to
a
the
matter of
critique.
hit points?
Today
Until
we are
next time.
dissecting a 3-session Curse of Strahd narrative arc covering the dinner with Strahd, Ireena's vampire revelation, Ismark's death, and a chaotic castle exploration.
Major protagonist deaths require narrative framing that matches their emotional and plot significance to maximize impact.
Yeah, exactly. And that brings us right into our first piece of feedback.
Right.
Looking at session 29, we've got the death of Ismark, the burgomaster. And he's not just some random NPC.
No, he's the driver of the plot. He brought them to Ravenloft.
Exactly. But the weakness here is that his death feels like a purely mechanical casualty.
It really does.
It happens incredibly abruptly during this combat encounter with an animated armor.
Yeah, the text just says the armor beats past his guard and electrical surges finish him off.
Right, it reads like a transaction in a ledger.
Hit points reduced to 0. Status dead.
Yes, it completely lacks the tragic climax that a character of this magnitude deserves, you know? It focuses on the mechanics of the hit rather than the weight of the loss.
Which is a shame because just moments before this, Ismark was weeping over that centuries-old portrait of his sister.
He realized he failed her.
Right. That's such a heavy emotional beat. And to go from that straight into a sterile, functional description of combat, it just misses the mark.
So the suggestion here is to deliberately slow down the narrative pacing during the death scene.
Yeah.
You need to focus on the emotional resonance rather than the physical action of the armor.
Shift the lens from the what to the how it feels.
Exactly. And just to give a few concrete examples of how you might execute this, and these are just a couple of options out of many, instead of describing the armor's efficiency, describe Ismark's final view.
Oh, I like that.
Limit the description of physical pain. Describe his eyes staring past the armor, maybe looking back at that window toward the portrait.
Internalize the moment.
Right. His eyes glaze over with this heartbreaking acceptance that he failed.
Yeah. Another concrete example could be contrasting the hollow nature of the armor with Ismark's emotional burden.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Right? He's being killed by an empty shell. No soul, no feeling. It emphasizes the irony that after facing the emotive horror of his vampire sister, he gets undone by a soulless object.
Yes. It turns a standard combat round into a thematic statement.
Definitely.
Maintaining the suspension of disbelief in a horror setting relies on minimizing elements that break the established mood of sophisticated dread.
And that leads perfectly into the environment of the study itself.
Yes, the fire incident.
Right. The author is clearly aiming for high-stakes gothic horror. We've got the screaming aura, Ireena wearing the amulet, psychological torture.
It's very Bram Stoker.
But then, to extinguish a fire in the study, the players decide to urinate on the embers.
Yeah. The weakness here is a massive, jarring tonal clash.
It really is.
It pulls the narrative straight out of a tragedy and right into a frat house comedy.
It undermines all that tension built up in the chambers of weeping.
Exactly. The players are always going to do chaotic things, right? But the weakness is that the narrative just lets it happen without consequence, which condones that tonal shift.
So the suggestion isn't to take away player agency and just say no.
No, never break agency.
Right. The suggestion is to describe the environment reacting negatively to that crude behavior. Filter their actions through a narrative lens that maintains the grim atmosphere.
Yes. For example, and again, these are just a few concrete ways to handle it. If they do this, don't play it for laughs.
Right.
Describe the smoke reacting. It shouldn't just disappear. It should choke the room. Give them this desperate, smoky suffocation.
Like the room itself is disgusted by them.
Exactly. You could have the smoke form a judging visage.
Oh, maybe the face of the portrait they just desecrated.
Yes, or make the smell unnaturally foul.
A supernatural stench.
Right, a concrete mechanical example. That stench of disrespect clings to their clothes, and it gives them disadvantage on their next social check with Strahd.
That's perfect. It punishes the characters for treating the setting trivially. It reasserts the genre.
Yeah, it tells them, you can act like clowns, but this castle will treat you like vermin.
Transitions that rescue characters from certain death must be framed as intentional villainous agency rather than obvious plot armor.
Yes, this is crucial for the aftermath on the battlements.
Right, because Ismark dies, Perlin is struck down, and then they just fade to black and wake up in a guest room with Escher.
The weakness here is that it feels like a total deus ex machina to avoid a party wipe.
It disconnects the cause and effect.
Completely. It lowers the stakes because the players suddenly feel like they can't actually lose. The DL will just wake them up somewhere safe.
So the suggestion is to explicitly frame their survival as a calculated act of cruelty or boredom by Strahd.
Not just a lucky blackout.
Exactly. It needs to feel imposed.
Right. So, looking at concrete examples, when they wake up with Escher, don't just have him sitting there reading a book.
Have him explicitly comment on it.
Yes. So he could say something like, "The master isn't finished playing with you yet."
Or, "Death is a gift you haven't earned."
Oh, that's chilling. I love that.
It turns their survival into a sentence.
Exactly. Another concrete example to fix this is describing the physical lingering effects of that near-death experience.
Right, they shouldn't just wake up with full hit points feeling fine.
Give them deep, aching scars where the armor struck them, or a supernatural chill.
Maybe they're missing an important item that Strahd took as a trophy.
Yes. Ensure that the defeat carries a lasting penalty. They need to know they lost the fight, even if they survived.
That brings us to the aftermath, when they start roaming the castle.
Right. The transition from high-tension social encounters to dungeon crawling needs to sustain the psychological pressure established in the opening scene.
And the weakness identified here is that the narrative tension dips significantly after the dinner.
It really does. You have this massive emotional peak with vampire Ireena.
Yeah.
But then it's immediately followed by aimless exploration. They find empty rooms, a dummy mannequin prank, and Leaf the accountant.
The horror becomes totally procedural.
Exactly. Checking doors, looking for loot, the psychological dread vanishes.
So the suggestion is to infuse the exploration phase with echoes of the dinner's revelation. Make the castle feel like an extension of Strahd's mockery.
Right. Don't let the tension release. Change the type of tension.
For example, instead of a generic Scooby-Doo mannequin prank,
Right. A dummy that just groans.
have the mannequin dressed to resemble their lost cleric.
Or the recently deceased Ismark.
Yes. When they realize it's a fake, it's not a relief, it's a psychological taunt.
It shows Strahd is watching and mocking their grief. These are great examples of keeping that pressure up.
And what about Leaf Lipsiege?
Right, the accountant.
A concrete example of fixing that encounter is linking his accounting directly to the party's actions.
Instead of him just doing generic taxes. Exactly. Have him tallying the cost of the dinner to the estate. Or calculating the value of Ireena as a bride versus a hostage.
That forces them to re-engage with the plot even during a mundane social encounter.
It makes Leaf a reminder of the bureaucracy of evil, not just an obstacle.
Interactive objects in the environment should serve to deepen the lore or foreshadow immediate threats, rather than just acting as physics puzzles.
Yes, the environmental storytelling. We have two major set pieces here. The wedding cake with the bride figurine, and the bathtub full of blood.
Great Gothic imagery.
Incredible imagery. The author's intent is clearly to lean into that classic aesthetic.
Right.
But the weakness is that their triggers feel totally disconnected.
The cake explodes because a figurine was touched.
And a vampire jumps out of the tub when they look at it.
Yeah, they feel like gotcha traps.
Exactly. They read like video game physics puzzles. Touch X, Y explodes. They aren't integrated story moments.
So the suggestion is to tie those environmental traps directly to the narrative of the wedding or the tragedy of the inhabitants.
Make them symbolic.
Right.
So, for concrete examples, the cake shouldn't just be a proximity mine made of flour.
Right, when they remove the bride figurine.
It should rot rapidly, molding and collapsing in seconds, or perhaps it begins to bleed.
Symbolizing the corruption of the wedding and Ireena's fate.
Yes, the cost should feel supernatural and symbolic, not mechanical.
And for the bathtub?
Instead of just springing a combat encounter, which is a jump scare, build suspense.
Let them see the forest before the tree.
Exactly. A concrete way to do this is to allow the players to hear weeping coming from the tub before the attack.
Or see ripples in the liquid.
Give them moment to dread what's about to happen. That's always scarier than the monster itself.
And if the spawn in the tub is wearing a tattered wedding dress, it links back to Strahd's brides.
Exactly. It becomes a lore point, not just a stat block.
Well, this has been a really thorough look at this session art.
It has. To recap briefly for the listener, we've got 4 main actionable areas.
Right.
First, give true narrative weight to major deaths, like Ismark's, by slowing down and focusing on the emotional realization of failure, rather than the combat mechanics.
Second, Eliminate those tonal inconsistencies. If the players act like frat boys in a horror castle, the environment needs to punish them to maintain the dread.
Third, frame any survival from a party wipe as Strahd's intentional cruelty. Make them feel the cost of losing.
And finally, sustain that psychological pressure during exploration by tying mundane objects and traps, like the mannequin, the accountant, and the cake, directly into the trauma of the overarching narrative.
Exactly. These adjustments will align the mechanics with the incredibly high stakes of this campaign. We strongly invite the listener to submit their next set of session logs to the critique so we can see how the escape from Ravenloft ultimately concludes.
Can't wait to read it.
Thanks for tuning in.